Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for dropping by. My name is Bernadette, and I was actually living in China for about 2 years. And as the title of this video suggests, I left China. So as of October 2022, I left China, and I'm not planning to go back. To not to live there at least. And there are several reasons why I left China, and a lot of things were worked together, I would say, and combined those things made it a little bit difficult for me to continue living in China, and so I decided to leave. There are some personal reasons why I left, and I will not go into those ones, but there's other stuff as well. So one of the biggest things was a zero COVID policy, and this made it so difficult for me and so difficult for foreigners to live in China. When I went to China in October 2020, China was actually still open. When everywhere else was locking down and stuff, China was still open, so we could travel within China, we could move around and stuff like that. But then gradually China now started locking down, because they really wanted to keep to make sure that there was no spread of COVID at all. So anywhere where COVID was identified was immediately locked down, and this went on and on. And so at some point it became really difficult to travel within China. So it was already difficult or near impossible to travel outside China. For me, I was able to travel outside China, but even then going back was really difficult to find tickets, and even when you found them, they were so expensive. Then there was quarantine, and then there was all the uncertainty and unpredictability of all the COVID regulations ahead. So it was such a difficult process. But there's some people who are absolutely not able to leave China at all for 2-3 years. And so now with that being sort of restricted, and now not being able to travel even within China, that means that you are more or less just restricted to the country and the province or the area where you're living. And even when you did try to travel, it was actually a game of chance, because you could travel, and then when you're coming back, you're either not allowed to go back to your city, or you're allowed and you're placed in quarantine and things like that. But also the sheer number of COVID tests that we had to take. Just living within Beijing alone, we had to take a COVID test every 3 days. And if you didn't take that COVID test, you could not access any facilities. You couldn't access the train, you couldn't go to a restaurant, you couldn't go take a taxi, you couldn't go to the subway, you can't even fuel. You can't even say, oh, I have my own car, I will still go around. You cannot go to a fuel station without having that COVID test every 3 days. So it was practically impossible. You can't even go to a public toilet. There's one day that I really got really worked up. I got really worked up because I got into this park, where getting through the park, I did show my COVID test results within the last 3 years and 3 days, and it was green. I was all clear. But then when I was inside the park, my phone went off. So now, to get into the toilet inside the park, you have to show the thing on your phone. And I was like, hey, I need to go, but my phone went out. But then to get into the park, I already showed the COVID test results and stuff. And they couldn't allow me to go into the toilet. You could not go to the freaking washroom without having that 3-day thing. So I think that was one of the days when I almost really lost it. And so talking about travel to other cities, this one time that I really decided, oh, let me try to travel, that was really hectic. I was traveling in, I think, 3 different provinces, and I literally had to take a COVID test every single day. And for foreigners, when you travel to another city, you don't just do a COVID test anywhere. There's a specific hospital where you go to do the test. So you had to go there. So at some point we had to go there every single day to do the COVID test. and then go there later to pick up the results for the ones you took earlier in the day, like that. So we had to make a trip to the hospital twice, in the morning to do the test, and then in the evening to pick up the test results. And so so again, another thing, it was also almost impossible for you as a foreigner at some point to book a hotel. It was that, like, first of all, in the first place, I think only 4-star and 5-star hotels are allowed to take in foreigners in China, as it is, or as it was. So add that onto the fact that every other time you would try to book a hotel and they realize that it's a foreigner, some hotels would actually just not allow foreigners to book a room in a hotel. I know of an instance where somebody actually traveled to a different city, and then they just thought, oh, this is just regular travel, right? You travel, you go, you book a hotel and whatnot. And when they got to that city, they were told, oh, foreigners cannot be able to book a hotel here, or foreigners cannot be able to go to this place or this place. They don't allow foreigners. And then at some point, for some places, for you to access them, you have to have been in China, in the country, for a specific number of days. So if you had traveled outside of China for some reason and came back, then you cannot be able to go anywhere for a specific number of days after you come back. So all this was really starting to honestly to get to me. There's one time I also got stuck at a border, at a province border. I had gone to a different province, and first of all, just the checks alone, all Chinese people were passing, but the foreigners had to be stopped, and we stayed at the border for about 1 hour, just for them to verify and check and do all these extra checks. And then when we finally crossed the border and we thought, okay, then now we can go and have a bit of fun, when we got to where we were going, the person the hotel owner actually called the police on us. So now we had police trailing us and tracking us and asking us, where have you been? When did you come into China? You need to go and register at the police station and things like that. And which was another thing. Like, if you're a foreigner and you travel to a different city or a different area, you actually have to register at the police station that you are a foreigner from this country or from this city, and you're there. Like, literally, there has to be a record of where you are at any one time. So that's how it was difficult for foreigners. Now I guess it's well, I need to talk about renting an apartment, because this one now was interesting. So at some point when I was trying to rent an apartment, I actually went and viewed. Some of the apartments were outright just not letting foreigners into the complex. But when I actually did manage to view some apartments, and I saw one that I really liked, and I was like, okay, fine, let's go for this one. And then later on, the agent called me and said, oh, you know what? The owner says that because the government is not allowing people to move right now, you cannot be able to move. And I said, I asked some of my Chinese friends, is there any such directive? And they said, there's no any such directive about foreigners not being able to move. So I was like, well, I don't know where this is coming from. And so my agent said, oh, but you know what? You can actually just still move into the house, but you just have to come through the basement. And I was like, what? Through the basement? So am I like going to just be operating in the dark, coming in after dark and whatnot, or hiding my face? Like, wow, oh, like people are not gonna notice, hey, there's a black person who's just moved into the neighborhood. I just found that so absurd. Of course, I declined to move at that time, and I had to stay in more or less like a hotel for the rest of the time that I was living in China. So that was quite something. now I guess things are opening up and things are changing, and hopefully it's going to get better for the foreigners who are still living in China. But for me, I think that's just the whole unpredictability, the whole changing rules, the fact that you have different rules in different provinces, and one province says this, another one says this, another one just decides to implement their own rules that are not directed by anyone. I think it was just a little bit too much for me. Another thing that I must talk about is racism. And I feel like this, while I feel like, yeah, racism probably has always been there, during COVID, I think it became more pronounced. You'd be, walking into some place and somebody is not wearing a mask. Even a restaurant, when people are eating, they don't wear the mask, and somebody will just see you walking by and they'll quickly put on their masks. You'd be walking somewhere and somebody with children will quickly grab their children and, cross the road or cross the area and walk to another direction. There's a time when I was in a train and we actually booked two beds in a cabin, in a sleeper train. And when we got into the train, these Chinese people who are inside, they actually packed up their bags and left. They said that they couldn't sleep in the same room with Africans or with black people. I don't know, something like that. So I feel like the racism just became so pronounced, and there are some things that I experienced that I was like, I really don't want to experience this type of I really don't want to experience something like this again. And this also like heavily influenced my decision to leave China. And that said, this is not an anti-China video or anything like that. As a matter of fact, I think that China is a really nice country. It's a beautiful country. It's huge in size, but also really big in terms of diversity, very rich in terms of culture, and it has amazingly beautiful places to visit. I mean, there's dozens and dozens of things that are still on my bucket list that I want to do in China, so I definitely plan to go back and visit sometime. But yeah, I mean, I decided to move on, and I moved back to Korea. Yeah, so I was living in Korea for 3.5 years, and so I got a chance to move back. So now I am back in Korea. I still have a lot of content around China, so I'm still gonna be posting a lot of stuff about China, but I'm also going to be documenting my life in Korea, which is a country that I really love, and I actually really missed it. So stay tuned for that. Thank you so much for watching, and see you in the next video. Bye.